Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're diving into a super exciting topic: how to start a startup. Starting a business is something that's on the minds of so many people these days, especially with how much the world has changed in the past few years. But, as exciting as it sounds, starting a startup comes with its own set of challenges. So today, we're going to break it down and walk you through the key steps you need to know if you're thinking about launching your own business.
That's right. Whether you've already got a great idea or you're still figuring things out, we're here to give you a roadmap to help you avoid some of the common pitfalls. It's important to remember that while the idea of being your own boss and building something from the ground up sounds amazing, the reality is that it takes a lot of hard work and planning. But don't worry, we'll walk you through the basics so you can get started on the right foot.
Exactly. And maybe the first place to start is with the idea. A lot of people feel like they need to come up with something totally revolutionary to start a business, but that's not always the case. Your startup idea doesn't have to be completely original. It just needs to solve a problem or fill a gap in the market. What do you think about that? How should people approach coming up with an idea?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about problem solving. Think about it this way. Every successful startup is solving a problem that people care about. Sometimes that problem is something you experience personally and you want to fix it. Other times, it might be something you notice other people struggling with. One piece of advice I always give is to keep your eyes open and listen to what people complain about. What's frustrating them? That's where your startup idea could come from.
That's so true! Some of the best business ideas come from just observing the world around you and seeing where there's an unmet need. Once you've got an idea, though, the next step is validating it. You've got to make sure other people actually want what you're offering. And that can be a tricky step, right? What's your take on validating a startup idea before jumping in full time?
Oh, it's crucial. You don't want to spend months or even years working on something, only to find out that no one wants it. The key to validation is getting out there and talking to potential customers. A lot of people think that means building a full product and then launching it, but you don't need to do that at first. You can start by creating a simple landing page or even just talking to people. Ask them if they'd use your product or service, or even better, if they'd pay for it. Pre-sales are a great way to validate your idea before you invest too much time or money.
Yes, I love the idea of pre-sales. That's a great way to test the waters without going all in right away. And while you're validating your idea, you can start thinking about the business model. You've got to figure out how you're going to make money, right? I feel like a lot of startups focus on growth at first, but if you don't have a clear path to making money, it's hard to sustain that growth in the long run.
Exactly. The business model is super important because it's what's going to keep your company running. You need to know whether you're going to sell products, offer services, use a subscription model, or even monetize through ads. It all depends on what kind of startup you're building. But one thing's for sure, cash flow is king. If you're not bringing in money, or at least have a plan for how you'll do that soon, it's going to be tough to keep the lights on.
Totally agree. And once you've got your idea validated and your business model in mind, the next big hurdle is funding. Some startups can be bootstrapped, but many need outside investment, especially if they're aiming for rapid growth. That brings us to one of the biggest questions: should you seek venture capital or go with self-funding?
That's such an important decision. Venture capital can give you the funds you need to scale quickly, but it also comes with strings attached. Investors will want a say in how you run your business, and there's a lot of pressure to grow fast and show results. On the other hand, self-funding or bootstrapping gives you more control, but it can also limit how quickly you can expand especially if you don't have a ton of savings.
It's definitely a balance. I think one thing people need to realize is that taking on investors isn't just about the money. It's about finding people who believe in your vision and can add value beyond the check they write. You want investors who are aligned with your mission and who can help you grow your startup in a smart way.
Yes, exactly. And that's why choosing the right investors is so important. You want people who bring more than just money to the table. Look for investors who have experience in your industry or who can connect you with the right people. And don't forget about grants or crowdfunding as alternative ways to raise money. Those can be great options if you're not ready to give up equity or take on debt.
Crowdfunding has definitely become a popular way to raise funds for startups, especially for products that have a broad appeal. It's a great way to get your idea out there and build a community of supporters at the same time. So once you've got your funding in place, what's next? I guess now we're moving into the fun part, building your product or service.
Yes, and this is where you've got to be really careful about scope creep. It's so easy to get carried away and try to build everything all at once. But when you're starting out, it's better to focus on creating a minimum viable product, or MVP. That's the simplest version of your product that still solves the core problem. Get it out there, test it, and then improve based on feedback.
MVPs are so important. I think a lot of first-time entrepreneurs fall into the trap of wanting to launch a perfect product right out of the gate, but perfection can take forever. It's better to launch something small, learn from your customers, and iterate from there. Plus, launching early gives you a chance to fail fast and pivot if you need to.
That's a great point. Failure isn't necessarily a bad thing when you're building a startup. It's all part of the learning process. If something isn't working, you want to find out early so you can adjust your approach. And that brings us to one of the final things we should talk about, building a team. You can't do it all alone, right?
Definitely not. At some point, you're going to need to bring on people to help you scale, whether it's co-founders, employees, or even freelancers. And building the right team is crucial. You want people who are not only skilled, but also passionate about your mission. Culture fit is huge when you're working in a startup environment because it's usually a small team, and everyone needs to be rowing in the same direction.
Yes, and the best teams are the ones where everyone brings something different to the table. You don't want a bunch of people who think the same way you do. Diversity of thought and experience can really help you see problems from different angles and come up with creative solutions.
Totally. And don't forget about marketing and branding. Even if you have the best product in the world, it won't matter if no one knows about it. You've got to figure out how you're going to reach your audience and get your product in front of the right people. Whether it's through social media, content marketing, or paid ads, getting your message out there is key.
Marketing is such a big part of any startup's success. And it's not just about the product, it's about telling a story. Why should people care about what you're building? What makes your product different from what's already out there? That's where your brand identity comes in. It's how you communicate who you are and why your product matters.
Absolutely. And once your startup is off the ground, the journey doesn't stop. In fact, it's just beginning. There will always be new challenges, but if you've got a clear mission, a great product, and a solid team, you'll be in a good position to navigate them. So, for anyone listening who's thinking about starting a startup, don't be afraid to take the leap. It's a lot of work, but it's also one of the most rewarding things you can do.
Totally agree. And we'd love to hear from you. Are you thinking about starting a startup? Or maybe you've already started one and have some tips to share. Let us know in the comments and maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode.